Greetings, friends. Father John here, and I'm coming to you today from our columbarium and labyrinth space. And this will probably look familiar to you because you may remember that I did a video recording in this same location last spring as we were ending our Lenten journey, moving into Holy Week, and facing the cross, the tomb, but eventually that empty tomb and resurrection experience on the gloriousness of Easter morning. And it's fitting that I come to you from this location today because as we approach this upcoming Sunday, we will be celebrating the Feast of All Saints and kind of combining that with our commemoration of all the faithful departed, or as it's also known, all souls as well. And this space is where we have committed the remains of our faithful departed who have come before us, both in our columbarium and in our ground niches that surround the labyrinth. But it's also fitting too, because in the early centuries of the church, this feast or this commemoration of both All Saints and All Souls was done in connection with Easter. It was actually commemorated in the earliest centuries on the Friday after Easter, as sort of a foil to Good Friday. We look at the cross, at the death of our Savior hanging there, dead. But then, with the empty tomb, we have the guarantee and assurance of resurrected life. And so, what more fitting of a place to commemorate that victory over death than in the days after the Easter celebration? But as the time would go on, as the centuries would compile, in the West at least, we began to celebrate that festival in the fall. And there's a meaningfulness in that too, because as we look, and as I've commented on in recent weeks, at the decay and the kind of encroaching death and darkness of the winter months, the ways in which nature is dying around us, and we approach those long, cold winter nights, there's a space in which death is very much on our mind. And yet, Advent, that we will begin in just a couple of weeks from now, is that experience of facing that darkness with hopeful expectation. Because Advent is both about the commemoration of Jesus' first coming in the incarnation, but also his return in the second coming. And it's in his return that all the saints will be raised, and all will be enfolded into God, and all will be renewed and restored and made complete in the fullness of time. And so we commemorate the saints of God, those who have lived exemplary lives, but also all those who have died, all souls, all who still may have more work to do in the hereafter, but those who have gone before us, those who are facing that resurrection experience on the last days, those who we remember, we mourn, but we look with hopeful expectation at rejoining in the fullness and then the end of all time, and when Jesus ultimately returns again. And that celebration, that commemoration, is not just an opportunity to remember and mourn and celebrate the lives of those who have gone before us, those who we have deeply loved, but it's an invitation and an opportunity for us to remember our own call on our own lives, to remember the commitments that we are making as faithful Christians, and to remember the things that those who have come before us have taught us about being faithful, committed Christians. And in that, it's also fitting that we have this celebration at the time of year and the time of our life together in which we are conducting our stewardship season. Because what more important of a reflection and a point of meditation do we have than what it is that we are being called to give? They often talk in the church about those 3 T's: time, talent, treasure. And those are the 3 T's that we are being called to consider in our time of stewardship. But I invite you this week to remember those 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure, in the context of your faithful departed, your all souls, who are the people of faith that you remember, that shaped and formed you in your own Christian identity. And how did they use their talents and their treasures and their time to communicate and shape and form you in that faith? How did they help you to see the light and love of God ever more fully in your life? And how might you be called then to use your talents, your time, your treasures to do that for the next generation? As we sit here in this space today, we remember each and every name of the person who is interred here, each and every name of members of this congregation who have gone before, each and every name of people who have loved and cared for and shaped us in the loving light of Christ. And I invite us in that moment of remembrance to consider ever more fully, ever more deeply, ever more earnestly the things that God is calling out of us in this time. So friends, my prayer for us today is that as we approach this great and joyous Sunday ahead, that we will be renewed in our own faith and remember what God is calling us into, and be ever more responsive to that call now and in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. As always, friends, my blessings go to you today and always.